Alright friends, today I got a story for you about Muzzammil Hassan. The best way I can describe this guy is he's just a wet fish. You see, he's a Pakistani American who beheaded his wife. I'm Pakistani, I live in America. I can explain this story to you. Let's get into it. So his name is Muzzammil Syed Hassan, but he told the world that his name was Mo Stephen Hassan. That was his white boy name. And back in like the early 2000s, he was the CEO of Bridges TV. Yeah, I haven't heard of it either. But it was the first American Muslim television network. He came to the United States from Pakistan at the age of 17. He graduated with an MBA from William E. Simon School of Business at the University of Rochester in 1996. He went on to become a successful banker in Buffalo, New York, and up until this point, he was the definition of the American dream. I mean, I could have told you back then this guy was a fucking idiot, but it is what it is. But it was in 2004 where his wife Aasiya gave him the idea. Let me read this out to you. She prompted him to develop an American Muslim media where her kids could grow up feeling really strong about their identity as being American Muslim. You see, they expressed the belief that some moderate Muslims could not identify with the extreme stereotypes often depicted in Hollywood productions and said that such Muslims think they are not accurately portrayed and that British TV gives American Muslims a voice and will depict them in everyday, real-life situations. The reason why this is important is because this goes back to 2004. Well, after 9/11, 3 years prior, you guys all can imagine, as Muslims, we were under attack in the media. So you have to understand the era, the context in which they're thinking for that time, right? But this idea of, oh, well, us Muslims need a voice, that shit always pissed me off because, well, if you need a voice, be the voice yourself. But that's a different discussion. So it was in February 2009 where Hassan was arrested upon the murder of his wife, Aasiya. According to Orchard Park Police, Hassan came to the police station at 6:20 p.m. on February the 12th, the day of the killing, and reported his wife dead. Her body was found in the TV station, and what Orchard Park Police realized is that when they pulled up his name, they had actually been to his house before in various domestic violence incidents. And I'm not trying to sound like a dickhead, but I can tell you myself, you take one look at his face and I knew this guy is a fucking moron. He definitely puts ketchup on his rice and he butters his toast on both sides. What a creep. Orchard police were most recently called to the residence on February the 6th, the day Hassan was served with divorce papers and an order of protection, where it is reported he was banging on doors and even broke a window. The divorce petition cited, and I quote, violence and inhuman treatment as the reason. What on earth was going on in that house? Police reports indicated that Aasiya stated her husband's abusive and controlling behavior had begun at least 6 years earlier. Sources claimed to be close to the case said hunting knives were used to commit the crime. Bitch, that wasn't no hunting knives. You think us Pakistani Muslims go hunting? That was just a basic knife we used to cut our mangoes. Now, shortly after the arrest, British TV posted the following notice on their website. British TV is deeply shocked and saddened by the murder of Aasiya Hassan and subsequent arrest of Muzzammil Hassan. Our deepest condolences and prayers go out to the families of the victim. We request that their right to privacy be respected. When you had Aasiya's funeral at the nearest Muslim community center nearby, more than 200 people showed up to her funeral. Now, it was said she was more of a practicing Muslim than her husband. She actually believed in the cause of changing perceptions. As I said, British TV was her idea. The victim's sister said her and her husband talked to Aasiya the day of the murder. According to the sister, she heard her sister tell Muzzammil to calm down and that they could talk the following day about the divorce. But then on the phone, they heard a struggle and then a sound where someone was losing their breath. Asma, the sister of the victim, referred to Muzzammil at the time, and I quote, the fat man with the evil eyes. But the reason why I mentioned earlier about the perceptions of Muslims at the time, let me read this out to you, right? Marcia Papas, the New York State president of the National Organization of Women. Right, this is what she said. Listen to this. This was apparently a terroristic version of honor killing, a murder rooted in cultural notions about women's subordination to men. And that is why I made this video. And that sentence itself is a load of bullshit. If a man, right, murders his wife 99.99 times out of 10, it is nothing, or 100, what am I talking about? It is nothing to do with terrorism. But of course, such was the aura and the perception and the media narrative at the time, this was just a word people threw out. Now, of course, I didn't give a shit, because I don't care what the media says. But what was even more interesting is during the trial, it became apparent that Muzzammil Hassan, the suspect, he wasn't even religious himself. You see, in British TV, most of the employees were non-Muslim. He did not pray. He didn't even observe Ramadan. Now, as Muslims, we fast 30 days. Of the year. I mean, you all know about Ramadan, right? You don't need to know the ins and outs, but from sunset to sundown, no water, no food, no sex, cheeky bastard. And whether you're religious or not, all Muslims observe this. Every single Muslim I know observe this. It's like a non-negotiable religious event. So for him to not fast says a lot about his lack of religiosity. What's also interesting is that he never covered the Palestine-Israel issue. You see, for the Muslim world, this is the biggest issue. But because he had a lot of Jewish friends, he had some Jewish employees, he didn't want to touch this issue. And if you asked me, this entire situation, it was not an honor killing, it was just a man who was a moron, had no idea how to look after and provide for his wife and have kids. He didn't know how to handle that stress, so he took it out on her. Obviously, he has domestic violence issues, he has impulse, he has no control over his impulse, but this has nothing to do with his religion. In fact, he was married twice before, and on both occasions, the two previous women filed for divorce, citing domestic violence. Now, during the trial, he was accused of stabbing his wife 40 times before beheading her because she filed for divorce 6 days before. Hassan's lawyer, Jeremy Schwartz, claims Hassan was beaten by his wife and feared for his life. What a bullshit artist. He initially pled not guilty to the charges of second-degree murder, and the trial began on January the 18th, 2011. Hassan did gain permission from the judge to represent himself after repeatedly trying to dismiss his own defense attorney, but Hassan did admit, however, that he had beaten his wife repeatedly between December 2007 and March 2008. Now, on January the 24th, he asked, while representing himself, for the case to be dismissed, citing a lack of evidence. I mean, talk about being a cheeky bastard. Of course, this request was denied. I mean, just take a look at this man. Do you honestly think he can represent himself? As a wanker, yes. In the court of law, no. Now, when it was all said and done, Hassan was sentenced 25 years to life in prison. And since then, he has done a couple of interviews where now he's an advocate in violence against women, as in stop violence against women. He's like a domestic violence advocate, if you like. But genuinely, when I read about this case, as I was reading, looking at his face, looking at his history, his background, his upbringing, he was just an idiot. You know, in some cases, when you look at someone's history, abuse as a kid, substance abuse, experience, sometimes the actions you undertake as an adult, they go far back to what you experienced as a child or a teenager or whatever. You know what I mean? Certain things become normalized for you, and you do that as an adult, and a lot of those incidences do end up in murder or whatever in certain stories that we know. But in this case, there was none of that. This guy was just arrogant, egotistical, and thought he was the dog's bollocks. Comment, tell me what you think.